Chapter 550. After the end of the main agenda of the 5 Kages tournament, as the 4th Raikage, I secretly invited the 4th Hokage, Watergate, for a secret meeting. As the initiator of the 5 Kages tournament, the 4th Raikage naturally wouldn't propose such a proposal to unite the 5 great shinobi villages without knowing anything about the Akatsuki. But it was precisely after understanding the situation of the Akatsuki that I became more afraid of them. In the early days, the Akatsuki was still okay, it was just an organization with some power in the Rain Country. But after experiencing a low point, that is, after being annihilated by the Rain Country's leader, demigod, Hanzo the Salamander, the Akatsuki became different. The Akatsuki that was originally open and aboveboard, suddenly began to turn into a half-light and half-dark organization, and in the end, even directly became an organization lurking in the dark. The purpose of the Akatsuki was to provide shelter for the weak, although it was a bit too idealistic, but it was full of the glory of humanity. But after they sneaked into the darkness, all their actions that carried the brilliance of humanity and ideals disappeared. The Akatsuki seemed to have become an organization in the blink of an eye, and no matter what kind of task, as long as it can collect money, the Akatsuki was willing to accept it. And from the outside, it seems that the Akatsuki also became strong by virtue of the change in style. But whether it was AI or Watergate, as the leader of a super force, they could see that the Akatsuki definitely didn't rely on such means to rise. Thinking about the strong people who joined the Akatsuki in the past, how could they be won over just by relying on money? Well, except for the big money fan of Kakuzu. The remaining people of the Akatsuki were all unruly existences, there was nothing that could really attract them, so why should they risk their lives for the Akatsuki? And how many years has it been since the Akatsuki was established? A lot of things can't be saved by just relying on money. So for the sudden appearance of Uchiha Obito in the 5 Kages tournament, although most people don't believe that he is really Uchiha Madara, but he must have a close relationship with Uchiha Madara. An organization that inherited the legacy of Uchiha Madara sounded like it could barely make a name for itself. Uchiha Madara was once called Azura. Even if it's just his legacy, it's not so easy to deal with. Therefore, in order to let the ninja allied forces accumulate more power, A went to Namake's Watergate. Because in the hands of Woodleaf, there was a powerful existence that no one could ignore, the Nine-Tails Fox Column Force, who was also the child of the 4th Hokage Wave Watergate, Uzumaki Naruto. The fact that Naruto is Column Force is actually not a completely undetectable news. As long as the time of Naruto's birth, the time when the Nine-Tails attacked Woodleaf, the physical characteristics of Naruto, and the few things that can be collected about Naruto's performance during missions in the ninja world, it's easy to judge the identity of Naruto. So a timely proposed to Watergate to let his younger brother Killer Bee take Watergate's son Naruto to train to control the tailed beasts in his body. If Naruto can perfectly control the tailed beasts in his body, it will indeed be a supplement to the high-end combat power of the ninja allied forces. More importantly, such an act can let us show enough goodwill to Watergate. After all, I have already asked my brother to take your son to train together. Woodleaf's mastery of the Nine-Tails is not so good for the Cloud Village, and there is even a risk of making Woodleaf stronger. I'm already willing to take such a huge risk to make your son stronger, to let your son have the ability to protect himself and even become an important force in the war. Even if you don't want to be loyal to me, you should at least have a closer relationship with me, right? After all, the Ninja Allied Forces is the union of the 5 great ninja villages. There are too many interests involved. Even the arrogant 4th Raikage has to find an ally who can make him feel assured enough to advance and retreat with him. The other 3 ninja villages may also start to draw each other at this time, so that they can get enough power to speak in the Ninja Allied Forces. Originally, Watergate didn't want to let Naruto and Killer Bee go to the Holy Land in the Land of Lightning to control the tailed beasts in his body. After all, there is also a descendant of the Uzumaki clan who is extremely good at taming tailed beasts in Woodleaf, his wife, Naruto's mother, Uzumaki Shinakushina. However, the Uzumaki clan's way of taming the tailed beasts is actually more similar to applying a lot of sealing techniques, so taming the tailed beasts is still not as fast as the Raikage proposal for him. But after seeing Naruto's performance and mood at the moment, Watergate knew that such a trip to the Land of Lightning was actually inevitable. After hearing his father's promise to become stronger, Naruto's eyes also burned with flames. "Naruto, I do have a way to make you stronger quickly. But such a thing as quickly becoming stronger contains a huge risk. Originally, I didn't intend to let you become stronger in this way, but now that I see the strong desire in your heart, I think I should tell you." Looking at Naruto, Watergate said with a slightly serious tone, "You know that the absolute king of the tailed beasts is sealed in your body, the 9 tails. With the teaching of your mother and the help of Jiraiya-sensei, you have been able to control part of the power of the 9 tails in your body. This power can make you strong in an instant, but it also has the danger of losing control. After all, most of the tailed beasts are arrogant and unruly. They won't let you use their power so easily. I believe you have a deep understanding of this." Listening to Watergate's words, Naruto also nodded in agreement. When he was on the bridge of heaven and earth, the tailed beast in his body went berserk and made a big mess. If it wasn't stopped in time, perhaps he would have already lost his self-consciousness and become a killing machine, or even die because of it. But the tailed beasts are not really uncontrollable. In the Kumo Shinobu village, there is a person who can perfectly control the tailed beast in his body, Column Force, and Yondaime Raikage also proposed to me to let the Hachibi Column Force teach you how to use the power of the tailed beast in your body. This is your opportunity to become stronger. Chapter 551. Naruto and Watergate talked for a long time all night. It wasn't until the east of the sky outside the window that Watergate finally let Naruto go back to rest. Watergate didn't expect that he would become so talkative and long-winded when it came to his family. For the whole night, except for the first 1 or 2 hours, Watergate talked about some practical things about cultivation. In the end, it all turned into reminding Naruto to pay attention to his safety. Watching Naruto covering his mouth and yawning as he walked towards his room, Kuroto couldn't help but smile. Watergate looked at the time and found that there was still some time to rest, so he walked slowly to his room upstairs. Stepping up the stairs step by step, Watergate came to the door of his room, but saw that the door of the room was not closed. Instead, it was ajar. Watergate's mouth flashed a smile. He gently pushed open the door of the room and walked into the room. At this moment, Shina Kushina seemed to be sleeping. She covered herself with a quilt. Her breathing seemed to be even, as if she had really fallen into a dream. With a smile, Watergate slowly walked to Shina Kushina's side. He put his mouth next to Shina Kushina's ear and said softly, "Okay, stop pretending. Naruto, that silly child, can't find you, but how can I not find you? You have been lying in the corner listening to us for a long time. I think you should have heard everything, right?" Shina Kushina obviously knew that she couldn't fool Watergate by pretending to be asleep, so she directly lifted the quilt covering her body and looked directly at Watergate. Perhaps because of pretending to be asleep just now, Shina Kushina's hair was slightly messy, but what was more eye-catching was Shina Kushina's red and swollen eyes at the moment. In this world, no mother wants to put her child in danger. Every mother is willing to be fearless in order to protect their child's safety. A woman is weak, but a mother is strong. Shina Kushina agreed with Watergate's words to Naruto about sending him to Kumo Shinobu village to control tailed beasts. But how can it be so easy to control a tailed beast? In the face of the rebellious tailed beast, even the Uzumaki clan relied on their special body and superb sealing ability to tame the tailed beast step by step. So far, only a handful of people have been able to perfectly control the Kyuubi. The most recent person who was able to do so was Uchiha Obito, the masked man who forcibly controlled the Kyuubi with his Manjikyu Sharingan when the Kyuubi invaded Konoha more than 10 years ago. From this, it can be seen that the conditions to control a tailed beast are extremely harsh. Whether Naruto can control the 9 tails in his body or not, no one can give a clear answer. But seeing the excited expression on Naruto's face, Shina Kushina, who wanted to go out and scold Watergate again and make Watergate give up such a dangerous plan, could only resist the urge to rush forward again and again. Can't we change the way? I can teach Naruto more exquisite sealing techniques, you can also teach Naruto more wind release ninjutsu. These are all ways to make Naruto stronger. Do we have to let Naruto become stronger in such a dangerous way? Shina Kushina looked at Watergate, her eyes were filled with tears again. At this moment, Shina Kushina didn't have the spirit of blood red pepper. In the past, she was simply a weak woman. Watergate didn't explain to Shina Kushina the necessity of Naruto going to Kumo Shinobu village to practice, because Watergate knew that Shina Kushina already knew these things, so there was no need for him to explain so much. Watergate just slowly sat beside Shina Kushina and hugged Shina Kushina into his arms. He stretched out his hand and gently stroked Shina Kushina's soft red hair, trying to calm Shina Kushina down. Shina Kushina. You are Naruto's mother, and I am also Naruto's father. If I had a choice, I would definitely want my child to live a stable and peaceful life, and I don't even want him to become a ninja. But we don't have a choice. When we were born into this world, we had no choice. We have to train Naruto to be a killing ninja, because only by killing can he not be killed by others. Watergate finally spoke, but he didn't have the usual passionate and generous tone. Instead, it was full of helplessness. Now the Akatsuki has declared war on the entire ninja world, and their goal is very clear, that is, Column Force, who has the 9 tails. Naruto is their goal, and in order to extract the 9 tails from Naruto's body, they will only use all kinds of means to attack Naruto. We can indeed protect Naruto for a while, but we can't protect Naruto for a lifetime. Temporary stability and long-term stability, we have to make a choice between them. Speaking of this, Watergate's eyes flashed with a trace of firmness. Accepting the trial is indeed a dangerous thing, but such danger can give Naruto the opportunity to protect himself. Whether it is a young eagle or a sparrow, they must learn to fly with their wings. As parents, what we have to do is not only to give our children enough protection, but more importantly, learn to let go of our hands, so that they can live in this world stronger. Shina Kushina listened to Watergate's words, but felt that Watergate's tone was obviously a bit wrong. Raising her head to look at Watergate, Shina Kushina found that Watergate, who was usually very strong, also had red eyes at this moment. When he saw Shina Kushina looking at him, Watergate blinked, trying to force back the tears in his eyes, but instead, a drop of tear was squeezed out of his eye. The warm and even scalding tears dripped on Shina Kushina's face, making Shina Kushina completely understand the entanglement and reluctance in Watergate's heart at this moment. Gently wrapping her arms around Watergate's waist, Shina Kushina fell into Watergate's arms, listening to Watergate's heartbeat. That's right, after all, the two of them couldn't protect Naruto for a lifetime, so they had to let go in the end. Although Minato and Kushina were very reluctant to let go, Minato and Kushina were very reluctant. Chapter 552. In the Blood Cloth Pavilion, a high platform had been set up in the huge square that was used for morning and evening practice. The high platform was divided into 2 levels. The first level was composed of the 5 colors representing the 5 elements: black, green, red, yellow, and white. In the middle of each color, there was a hollowed-out chair carved with the pattern of the 5 elements. Obviously, this was the seat prepared for the 5 altar masters of the Blood Cloth Pavilion. On this level of the 5-colored high platform, there was a blood-colored platform that looked like it was watered with blood. Unlike the complicated decorations on the chairs of the 5 elements altar masters, this seat at the highest level looked a little too ordinary. There were no hollowed-out decorations, nor was there any huge specifications. It was just a very simple chair. However, such a simple and plain chair wasn't as simple as it looked. The chair's dark red surface and the dragon-shaped patterns entwined around it gave the chair a dignified feeling. Next to the chair, a short square table made of the same material was placed. A shelf that was obviously used to hold a long sword was placed on the table. At this moment, the blood cloth pavilion had become a little noisier than before. After all, Nangongzhe had ordered all the outside forces of the blood cloth pavilion to return and prepare for war. And Mashiro naturally carried out Nangongzhe's orders faithfully. In the middle of the blood robe pavilion, which was large enough to accommodate at least 1,000 people, the people standing in the square weren't ordinary disciples of the blood robe pavilion, but the backbone of the blood robe pavilion. Each of them had the strength of a chunin or even an elite chunin or above. Although there were many people, there wasn't much noise. Sometimes, the sound of nearly 1,000 people in the square couldn't even be compared to the occasional chirping of birds and insects from the surrounding forest. However, silence didn't mean silence. Now, everyone standing in the square had bright eyes at this moment. Many of them even exuded a dangerous aura. The words that Nangongzhe asked Mashiro to pass on to all the disciples of the blood cloth pavilion were naturally heard by these people. Originally, when the blood garment pavilion existed as a hidden force, because it was isolated from the world, it did not have much desire for profit or fame. However, because of Nangongzhe's ascension to the throne, everything changed dramatically. Nangongzhe needs to rely on the power of the blood cloak pavilion to protect his family, which is very important to him. The blood cloak pavilion also relies on Nangongzhe's understanding of the shinobi world and Nangongzhe's own strength to gradually change from a hidden force to a powerful force second only to the 5 great shinobi villages. Due to the rise in their status and the benefits that were constantly falling into their lap, it was clear that the blood garment pavilion, from top to bottom, had become more ambitious. That feeling was like a ferocious beast that had always been eating vegetables was suddenly fed a piece of fresh and juicy meat. The desire for meat that came from the bottom of his heart was enough to overcome all difficulties and obstacles. These were the so-called ferocious beasts, which were also the so-called humans. Finally, after a long wait, the 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar came out wearing large robes that represented the colors of their respective 5 elements. Aoki, Akatsuki, Hutu, and Bishui were the original altar lords of the 5 elements altar, and the one who replaced the rebel sharp metal was Mashiro, who has been following Nangongzhe. However, all of this didn't cause any waves. For the disciples of the other 4-5 elements altar, it didn't matter who the altar lord of the sharp metal altar was. For the disciples of the sharp metal altar, after their original altar lord rebelled, they were directly under the leadership of Nangongzhe, the head of the blood cloak pavilion. In most cases, Nangongzhe was not so keen on attending some of the meetings of his own forces, so Mashiro presided over the meetings for Nangongzhe. Everyone had witnessed Mashiro's ability. Today's meeting required the altar lords of the 5 elements altar to be present, but Nangongzhe was the head and an altar lord. In order to let everyone understand that the 5 elements altar was on the same level as him, Nangongzhe couldn't directly give the title of sharp metal altar lord to himself. Therefore, he gave Mashiro the right to represent the sharp metal altar in the meeting. After the 5 altar lords appeared, they did not immediately take their seats. Instead, they all stood at the front of the high platform. The 5 of them stood in a row and looked at the disciples of the blood garment pavilion standing in front of them. Aoki was the most senior among the 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar, so he stood in the middle and also in the front of the 5. Looking around at the many core disciples standing in front of him, Aoki's eyes were full of emotion. Although he was an old man, Aoki wasn't the kind of stubborn old man who didn't know how to adapt. In the past, the blood cloak pavilion had always stayed out of things and didn't participate in anything in the ninja world. They just lived in the mountains by themselves. This kind of existence couldn't be said to be bad. After all, this kind of existence allowed them to live in a very stable environment for development. But is stability really a good thing? No matter how long a force without tension or oppression could struggle at death's door, it would eventually be drowned in the torrent of history. Looking at the current blood cloak pavilion under the leadership of Nangongzhe, its scope of influence has almost expanded to the entire ninja world, becoming the first force under the 5 great ninja villages. More importantly, after Nan Gongxia took over, the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion became more energetic. Many of the disciples who were originally idling around had unknowingly undergone a change. Just like the nearly 1,000 disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion standing in front of him now, who were comparable to Chunin and even elite Jonin. In fact, more than half of them stood out after Nan Gongxia took the position. Many of the Blood Garment Pavilion's disciples no longer addressed Nan Gongxia as head of the throne, or king of hell, in terms of fame. Instead, they addressed him as Lord of Resurgence from the depths of their hearts. Slightly clearing his throat, Aoki slammed his crutch on the high platform and said to everyone, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. Welcome, Lord." Chapter 553. After hearing Qing Mu's old but powerful voice, every disciple of the Blood Cloth Pavilion became excited. After all, Nan Gongxia's reputation among the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion was so high that no one could reach it. Perhaps there was a certain degree of estrangement between the 5-element altars of the Blood Cloth Pavilion, but as long as Nan Gongxia gave any order, the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion would wholeheartedly unite to carry out Nan Gongxia's order. "Welcome, Chief. Welcome, Chief. Welcome, Chief." Under Qing Mu's lead, all the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion standing in the square began to cheer. The voices of nearly 1,000 people, which were supported by internal strength, radiated in all directions like a tsunami. The disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion half-knelt toward Nan Gongxia's position on the high platform. Qing Mu and the other 4 5-element altars' altar masters also bowed toward Nan Gongxia's position. Amidst the cheers, Nan Gongxia's figure finally appeared slowly. Unlike usual, Nan Gongxia did not wear the loose black and red robe that he usually liked to wear. Instead, he wore the white robe that represented the Blood Cloth Pavilion. Nan Gongxia wore the white silk robe with fine veins and a large part of it was stained with blood. Nan Gongxia was like a banished immortal who had fallen from the heavens into the mortal world. He did not have the slightest bit of mortal aura, as if he was incompatible with the world but had unexpectedly appeared in this world. Nan Gongxia held his black calamity sword and slowly floated down from the sky. Nan Gongxia's body didn't emit any powerful aura at this moment. He was just like a feather that was being blown by the wind. A feather dyed in blood slowly fell from the sky. Standing in front of his position, Nan Gongxia slowly shook the hem of his robe as if he was flicking off some dust on it. Then, he casually sat down. Nan Gongxia casually tossed his Heaven's Calamity sword into the air and released a few strands of internal energy from his fingertips. The internal energy hit the hilt of the Heaven's Calamity sword and adjusted its position in the air. When all of the internal energy hit the Heaven's Calamity sword, the Heaven's Calamity sword landed firmly on the sword rack on the short table beside the chair. After doing all this, Nan Gongxia finally slowly raised his head and looked at the many disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion standing in the square. "Get up," Nan Gongxia's voice was not loud. It even sounded like a whisper. When Nan Gongxia spoke, he did not use internal strength to support his voice. However, his voice was able to drown out the cheers of nearly 1,000 people in the square. Everyone could feel the vibrations in their vocal cords, and they were very sure that they were shouting with all their might. However, the strange thing was that the world returned to silence at this moment. Other than Nan Gongxia's murmurs, all other sounds seemed to have been erased. The people gathered here were all cultivators of internal strength. Of course, they did not think that such a miraculous scene was a coincidence. The 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar, who were also standing on the high platform, naturally understood the reason for such a situation at this moment. Force was a powerful force that an internal force cultivator would obtain when they succeeded in their cultivation. In the process of battle, once an internal force cultivator used the force they comprehended, they would be able to greatly increase their own strength. On the other hand, those who stood on the opposite side of the internal force cultivator would be greatly suppressed. It could be said that potential was an important means that internal strength cultivators could use to resist the endless stream of strange ninjutsu. However, potential was not the end. On the contrary, potential was a step to a more powerful stage. When an internal strength cultivator who had potential understood his own heart and his cultivation reached a certain level, he would have a more powerful force, domain. There was a saying that went like this: the land under the heavens was the king's land, and the land under the heavens was the king's vassal. Domain was the ability to turn a certain area into a space that one could completely control. One would be able to make all things in this space obey. At this moment, Nangongzhi was using the legendary domain that was above potential. Moreover, it covered an area of nearly 650 square meters. At this moment, Nangongzhi was showing his muscles, and he was using the most simple and direct method. I am your leader, and I have the power to protect you. Although we are about to face a very difficult battle, and we may face many dangers. Some of us may even be seriously injured or even lose our lives. But you only need to know that your leader is strong. He is strong enough to lead you to the final victory. All of your sacrifices will not be in vain. You will appear in front of the world as a victor. The 5 sanctum leaders of the 5 elemental sanctum who were standing closest to Nangongzhi could feel how powerful the domain that Nangongzhi released was. They, who were proficient in tactics, naturally understood Nangongzhi's intention the best. Mashiro, who was dressed in a white robe with golden patterns, was also looking at Nangongzhi, who was sitting on the high platform with a face full of admiration. The gentle Nangongzhi at home was the Nangongzhi that Mashiro liked. However, the current Nangongzhi, who was filled with an invincible aura and stood at the peak of everything, was more like the Nangongzhi that he first met. Nangongzhi seemed to feel that it was about time. He immediately retracted the domain that he used to suppress the voices of others and show off his muscles. In fact, it was quite stressful for Nangongzhi to use the domain on such a large scale. The fact that Nangongzhi was able to maintain it for so long was the result of him trying his best. After retracting the domain, Nangongzhi's hand, which had been resting on the chair, twitched slightly. However, in order to let the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion be confident in the upcoming battle, Nangongzhi felt that no matter what price they had to pay, they should be filled with confidence. Chapter 554. While the 5 great shinobi villages were actively preparing for war, and Nangongzhi of the Blood Cloak Pavilion was ambitious, the Akatsuki in the Rain Village naturally didn't stay idle. Uchiha Obito, who had changed his makeup, was holding Uchiha round fan in his hand, sitting on a huge black stone chair. Obito's 3 Tomo Sharingan and Rinnegan were casually staring at the vast space in front of him, while the huge Geto-Mazo appeared behind him. 7 of the 9 eyes on the Geto-Mazo's face were completely open at this moment, and the remaining 2 eyes were half open, and the other one was tightly closed. Is everything ready? Obito looked at Black Zetsu standing beside him and asked slowly. At this moment, Obito's voice became low under Obito's intentional control, and it seemed to have an unexpected sense of majesty. Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Obito, was slightly surprised. If he didn't know that the one sitting beside him was Uchiha Obito, he would have faintly felt that Uchiha Madara was reborn in his heart. Uchiha Obito, really a person good at hiding and disguising. Although he was slightly surprised in his heart, Black Zetsu didn't show such a surprise. Black Zetsu nodded to Obito with an expressionless face, then he stretched out his hands in front of his body. He slowly opened his clenched fists, then slowly pushed his palms upwards. Almost at the same time when Black Zetsu pushed his hands up, a figure that was very similar to White Zetsu slowly emerged from the ground. White Zetsu appeared one after another, one after another. After more than 10 minutes, this kind of appearance didn't stop. Obito seemed to be a little tired, and his eyes turned to Kabuto, who was standing on the other side of him, wearing a large snake-patterned robe. As if he felt Obito's gaze, Kabuto also turned to look at Obito. He gently pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and a strange smile appeared on his face as he said to Obito, "Please rest assured, during this period of time, with the help of Akatsuki, I have found enough DNA of the deceased people. Now, I am fully prepared, although I can't guarantee that I can fully exert the strength of these deceased people when they were alive, but 70% to 80% of their peak strength is not a problem." At the same time. Saying this, Yakushi glanced at Black Zetsu, who was standing opposite him. Yakushi then said to Obito with a hint of mischievousness, "I have done my best during this period of time to increase the strength of the deceased people we can grasp to 95% of their peak strength. After all, the Pajura, who made the whole ninja world tremble once again made everyone tremble under his power. The strongest person who had already passed away." Although Kabuto deliberately used such a slightly euphemistic tone, almost ridiculing Obito, but in fact, he was talking to Black Zetsu, but Black Zetsu was completely unmoved, and didn't have the feeling of losing control of his emotions when he saw Uchiha Madara resurrected by Edo Tensei. After seeing the reaction of Black Zetsu and Kabuto, the corners of Obito's mouth, which was hidden under his mask, curled up slightly. It seems that the effort he spent on Black Zetsu was not in vain. For Black Zetsu, although Uchiha Madara was still worthy of respect, but he was no longer willing to sacrifice everything for Uchiha Madara. Looking at Kabuto, at this moment, Kabuto's attitude of wanting to show his value in various ways made Obito very happy. Because people who want to show their value through various actions are often people who lack self-confidence in their own heart. For Kabuto's past, Obito didn't dare to say that he was clear about it, but he was clear about 50% to 60% of it. A person who is extremely eager to find his true self, as long as such a person wants to, there are many ways to control him. The entire White Zetsu Legion has the strength of a Chunin, such a number advantage is enough to crush any ninja village. In terms of high-end strength, Kabuto's Edo Tensei was able to summon countless powerful ninjas who had already passed away. The improved Edo Tensei can exert the strength of the reincarnated person to a greater extent. The current Akatsuki, to be honest, is not afraid of the ninja coalition of the 5 great ninja villages. Fight! 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 Defeat the ninja coalition formed by the 5 great ninja villages. Pull the Hachibi and 9 tails out of Column Force's body. Completely resurrect the Jubi. Let himself become the Jubi's Column Force and carry out the Eye of the Moon plan. Let himself see the smile of the girl he missed again, let himself be able to return to the simple and pure life he has been away from for a long time. Rin, I miss you so much. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, and Obito slowly closed his eyes again. The tears in his eyes, and the sour feeling slowly appeared on the tip of his nose. Obito almost tried his best to suppress such feelings. When Uchiha Obito opened his eyes again, there was no trace of confusion and sadness in his eyes, only determination. All the confusion and sadness are temporary, because as long as he can really carry out the Eye of the Moon plan, then he can regain everything he wants. And if the Eye of the Moon plan fails, he will just die. In that case, it is better to put all the doubts and confusion in his heart behind him and fight with all his strength. Get ready, we will launch the attack in 3 days. Obito looked at the 100,000 white Zetsu standing in front of him, and then looked at Black Zetsu and Kabuto standing beside him, and said slowly, although we already have a powerful force that can compete with the 5 great ninja villages, and even in terms of high-end combat power, we still have countless people who have passed away and are not afraid of death. But we can't take it lightly. What we want is not a big battle, but a real victory in the war. In order to win, no matter how dirty the means are, you too will spare no effort to use it. Chapter 555. Obito silently calculated the power in his hands, 100,000 white Zetsu with strength comparable to a Chunin, and dozens of dead people summoned by Jura's Edo Tensei. Needless to say, 100,000 white Zetsu is the power used to fight against a large number of ninjas from the 5 great ninja villages. The powerhouses summoned by the Edo Tensei are the most important. After all, In the world of ninjas, although the number advantage is very important, when an individual's strength has exceeded the limit, it's not impossible for a single person to directly affect a war. Where is Kisame Kisame? Suddenly, Obito asked Black Zetsu, who was standing beside him. Kisame Kisame is also a strong person that Uchiha Obito personally pulled into the Akatsuki. That kind of aggressive thinking and empty heart is the easiest sharp knife for Obito to control. And the fact is indeed so, Kisame Kisame has indeed done a good job over the years. The tasks given by him are basically completed very seriously. Even Itachi Uchiha, a bomb that can go out of control at any time, is monitored by Kisame Kisame, which is not bad. After hearing Obito's question, Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Uchiha Obito, immediately turned around and said to Obito, Kisame Kisame committed suicide because he failed the mission. Mission failed? Suicide? After hearing Black Zetsu's report, Obito's eyes were suddenly filled with a bit of astonishment. Kisame Kisame is not the kind of boring ninja with a fragile heart who can't accept his failure. On the contrary, because of Kisame Kisame's relatively strong nerves, his mental toughness is even stronger than most ninjas. Suddenly hearing these two words that had almost nothing to do with Kisame Kisame, Obito's brows, which were hidden under the mask, slowly knitted into a frown. Previously, we have been monitoring the people of Woodleaf Village and Cloud Village. By chance, we found that Uzumaki Naruto, who is the Nine Tails Column Force, and Killer Bee, who is the Hachibi Column Force, suddenly disappeared in their village. Because our main goal of this war is to capture the Hachibi and Nine Tails, I directly sent a part of White Zetsu to search and analyze the last place where the Nine Tails Column Force and the Hachibi Column Force appeared. Black Zetsu looked at Obito, and without the slightest concealment, he directly told all his arrangements to Obito. Under the effect of White Zetsu's detection ability, we quickly found that the Nine Tails Column Force of Woodleaf Village, Uzumaki Naruto, and the Hachibi Column Force of Cloud Village, Killer Bee, were in contact with each other, and they seemed to be rushing in a certain direction. In order to avoid any trouble, under my instructions, White Zetsu summoned the closest member of our Akatsuki organization to the location, that is, Kisame Kisame. Although Black Zetsu seemed to be unexpectedly honest at the moment, Obito's heart involuntarily began to have a kind of vigilance against Black Zetsu. Did his bewitchment these days not play its proper role? Black Zetsu's current behavior doesn't seem to be completely obedient to him. On the contrary, it's more like he wants to eliminate the power that he can control. Once suspicion began to appear in his heart, Obito's heart became sensitive. Such a war seems to rely too much on Black Zetsu's help, and the 100,000 White Zetsu army, such a force that can't be ignored, is firmly in the hands of Black Zetsu. And after Black Zetsu stole the Rinnegan from Woodleaf Village, he just used a reason to fool Obito, saying that he didn't find the second Rinnegan. For such a reason, although Obito didn't say anything, but obviously he didn't believe him. Obito thought that he could make Black Zetsu submit, and all kinds of performance during this time also made Obito feel that Black Zetsu had slowly fallen into his control. But at this moment, he didn't know why, but Obito felt that Black Zetsu's heart not only didn't become clear to him, but also became more vague as if it was shrouded in smoke. After a battle, Kisame Kisame was seriously injured because he couldn't defeat the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, and the 4th Raikage AI, who came later to support him, and for some reason, he directly used the shark muscle to commit suicide. The shark muscle itself has the characteristics of killing its master, so it directly swallowed Kisame Kisame, who had lost his life. And the shark muscle also became the trophy of the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, who carried it with him. That's all the information I can get. After hearing that Kisame 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 committed suicide and was swallowed by the shark muscle, Obito's frown loosened. The relationship between the shark muscle and the ghost shark couldn't be explained in a few words. Although it seemed that the ghost shark had indeed lost its life and even its body, it wouldn't end so easily. Translator, Law Editor, Hitesh _ although the ghost shark had indeed lost its life and even its body, it wouldn't end so easily. So that's how it is. After listening to Black Zetsu's words, Obito also slowly nodded, and said a few understated words, as if he didn't care about the death of Kisame. However, the fact that Yondaime Reikage and Hachibi Jinchuriki were able to work together to kill Kisame is still worthy of our vigilance. The shinobi allied forces formed by the 5 great shinobi villages are not easy to deal with. We also need to have more capital in the limited time to defeat them. Black Zetsu looked at Obito, and his eyes became obscure, making people unable to figure out what he was thinking in his heart. Baguette, who was standing at the side, slowly walked a few steps towards the huge stone chair that Obito was sitting on, as if he wanted to show off his skills. Baguette said to Obito with a look of confidence, "Let's see if there's anything you can do. You don't have to worry, I have already made arrangements to enhance our strength." With that said, Kabuto's hand also began to make hand seals. Summoning Jutsu. Kabuto pressed his hand on the ground, and a summoning circle was completed in an instant. A relatively huge python revealed its figure from the smoke. This snake looks far larger than normal, but strangely, there is a strange bulge in the belly of this snake. Under the control of Medicine Master's pocket, this huge snake opened its mouth, and spat out the obviously oversized object in its body as if it was vomiting. Soon, a white giant egg stained with mucus that seems to have a somewhat wooden feeling appeared in front of them. Although he couldn't immediately figure out what this white wooden egg was, a familiar aura was emitted from it. The ones who perceive it most clearly are Uchiha, Obito, and Black Zetsu. A part of their body was cultivated with the cells of the Woodleaf First Hokage Senju Takuma, so the aura of this white egg is very familiar to them. Because this white egg exudes the aura of the legendary god of shinobi, Senju Takuma. Chapter 556. In fact, there are only a few things in the ninja world that can be related to Senju Takuma's aura, such as the 100,000 White Zetsu army clone from Senju Takuma's genes. Black Zetsu shared the same body with White Zetsu, Uchiha Obito whose body was filled with Hashirama's clone cells, Yamato who was born from Orochimaru's research, and Shimura Danzo who was already dead. No matter how he thought about it, the main body of the wooden egg was still as clear as day. Yamato? Black Zetsu looked at the huge wooden egg and murmured slightly. Kabuto, of course, also heard Black Zetsu's murmur, and with a little pride, he said to Obito and Black Zetsu, "There are actually many ways to make the power in our hands stronger. For example, we can search for the DNA of more deceased people to carry out the Edo Tensei. We can also use various experimental methods to allow the experts who are reincarnated from the Edo Tensei to display more of their strength when they were alive. But the simplest and fastest way is naturally to strengthen the 100,000 White Zetsu army." Kabuto adjusted the round-rimmed glasses on his nose, and said to Obito and Black Zetsu, "The White Zetsu army was originally created with Senju Takuma's cells and the power of the Gedo Mazo, but the cells used to create the White Zetsu have also declined due to time, so the power of the various Mokuton ninjutsu used by the White Zetsu isn't that great." After saying that, Kabuto slowly walked to the side of the wooden egg. Regardless of the sticky body fluid attached to the wooden egg, Kabuto looked at it as if he was admiring a beautiful work of art, and there was a look of obsession in his eyes. But Yamato is different. He withstood the erosion of Senju Takuma's cells, and he really absorbed the Senju Takuma's cells in his body without any rejection. Although there was no way to exert the power of Mokuton to the extreme, it has to be said that the Senju Takuma cells in his body were actually activated to a certain extent. If we can extract the Senju Takuma's cells from his body, and use the Gedo Golem to modify the White Zetsu army, we will have a huge increase in power. The army of 100,000 White Zetsu originally had the strength of a Chunin. After such strengthening and transformation, although there may be individual differences, most of them will obtain the strength of a Chunin. If we have 100,000. No, even if we only have 50,000 or even 40,000 elite Chunin-level army, the ninja allied forces formed by the 5 great ninja villages will definitely be at an extremely obvious disadvantage in terms of basic strength. Hearing Medicine Master Bag's words, whether it was the expressionless Black Zetsu or Uchiha Obito, both of them were slightly moved. Although the two of them didn't know exactly how Medicine Master's pocket was going to change the 100,000 White Zetsu army, Medicine Master's pocket's description made it seem feasible. Then I'll leave everything to you. Taking a deep look at Medicine Master Bag, Uchiha Obito said slowly. Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Obito, also slowly walked to the side of the wooden egg and pressed his hand on it. A very pure Mokuton chakra was slowly transmitted from Black Zetsu's body to the wooden egg, and the wooden egg began to move a little under the stimulation of Mokuton chakra. This wooden egg was originally Yamato's ultimate means to protect himself, but in the end, it was still something made by using Mokuton chakra. At this moment, Black Zetsu used Mokuton chakra, which is almost the same as Yamato's, to forcibly invade the wooden egg and seize control of Yamato, who had lost his consciousness and was hiding in the wooden egg. As Black Zetsu's chakra continued to increase, the wooden egg, which was a little bit pale, became lively at this moment. The white wooden egg began to slowly be stained with a bit of green luster, and even a few tender green sprouts sprang out in some places. Finally, when Black Zetsu's chakra infusion reached a limit, the wooden egg that had been wrapped around Yamato's body finally couldn't withstand the huge power coming from inside. Like a ripe capsule, it directly burst open, and vines spread directly from the center of the wooden egg. In the center of the spreading vines, Yamato, who had lost consciousness but had no obvious injuries on his body, was lying in the center of the vines. Black Zetsu's powerful Mokuton power directly made Uchiha Obito sitting on the stone chair and Medicine Master Bag slightly surprised. Black Zetsu was really hiding something. But Black Zetsu didn't seem to feel that what he just did was strange. He directly grabbed Yamato's arm, and dragged the unconscious Yamato in the direction of Medicine Master Bag. I'll leave it to you. Looking at Medicine Master Bag, Black Zetsu directly threw Yamato in the direction of Medicine Master Bag. Looking at Yamato who was flying towards him, a huge white snake suddenly came out from Medicine Master Pocket's loose robe. The huge white snake opened its mouth and directly caught Yamato who was flying towards him in its mouth. The white snake didn't reveal its poisonous fangs, so Yamato didn't receive any injury. At this moment, Medicine Master Bag forcibly hid the indignation in his heart. After all, for the sensitive Medicine Master Bag, Black Zetsu's action was simply telling him that he was powerless against this wooden egg. Although this was a fact, but Medicine Master Bag still didn't want to be humiliated like this. I don't need you to say more. Looking at Black Zetsu, Medicine Master Bag coldly said. Obviously it was such a short conversation, but it was really full of gunpowder smell. And as the nominal leader of Akatsuki organization, Uchiha Obito coldly looked at Medicine Master Bag and Black Zetsu who were at daggers drawn, and the atmosphere was tense. Persuade? Uchiha Obito didn't think about such a thing at all. What Uchiha Obito wanted was not how harmonious the organization was. What Obito wanted was to have enough power to compete with the joint forces of the 5 great shinobi villages. Now he, Black Zetsu, and Medicine Master Bag have a common enemy. And his biggest goal now is to defeat the 5 great shinobi villages as a common enemy. Once the 5 great shinobi villages are defeated, the Eye of the Moon plan will be implemented. At that time, everything will be under Uchiha Obito's control. Dealing with this small disharmony is simply a simple matter. Chapter 557. With the fermentation of time and the news of the war spread like wildfire, the entire ninja world seemed to be shrouded in a layer of haze. The ninja world has experienced too much pain because of the war. When the news of the war began to spread, almost everyone living in the ninja world began to become nervous. Everyone in the ninja world was like a frightened animal, doing everything possible to prevent themselves from being hurt by the upcoming war. But for those who are at the top of the power, who can benefit from the war is the grandest carnival. In the daimyo house of the Land of Fire, the daimyo of the Land of Fire didn't seem to be worried at the moment. Instead, his eyes were very excited. The Land of Fire is the strongest village in the ninja world, Woodleaf Ninja Village. In the First Shinobi World War, Second Shinobi World War, and the Third Shinobi World War not long ago, although Woodleaf itself also suffered a certain degree of loss, but there is no doubt that every time they stood in the middle of the battlefield as the winner. It is precisely because of the victory of Woodleaf again and again that the daimyo of the Land of Fire have a kind of almost blind faith in Woodleaf. Looking at some of the predictions about the war and the temporary plan of Woodleaf submitted by the 4th Hokage Wave Kaze Watergate, the daimyo of the Land of Fire showed a bit of a greedy smile at the moment. The 5 great ninja villages are attacking the Akatsuki of the Land of Rain. What a grand event this is. Slowly picking up a wide-mouthed wine cup beside him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire showed a touch of fanaticism in his eyes. Expand the territory, expand the territory. As the supreme leader of a country, in addition to letting the country pass on smoothly in his own hands, what else is worth being so excited about? Naturally, it is to make the country stronger in his own hands. The strength of a country is reflected in many aspects, but the most obvious and the most significant is the expansion of the territory. The daimyo of the Land of Fire has begun to slowly realize the aging of his body, and the time he can stay in this world to enjoy the glory and wealth is not much. But when he looked back at the past few decades, even though he had achieved quite a lot of political achievements, he still felt that it wasn't enough for the Fire Nation. And now, an opportunity that was hard to come by was placed right in front of the Fire Country's eyes. This time, the Rain Country could be said to have angered everyone. In the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, there is no possibility of failure in this war. When the 5 great shinobi villages won the war, the daimyo of the Land of Fire decided to gather the daimyo of several other countries and directly use their power to erase the Land of Rain from the map of the shinobi world. At that time, the 5 major countries would jointly divide the country of Rain, although the territory of the country of Rain wasn't that big. However, if the Fire Nation could get a share of this land, it would be considered as an unparalleled achievement in expanding their territory. Just as the great name of the Fire Nation was immersed in leaving his name in the annals of history for future generations to look up to, a burst of noise suddenly sounded from outside the palace where the great name of the Fire Nation was. Assassin! Assassin! Guards, an assassin has broken into the palace. Catch him, don't let him get away. Kill! 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 The harsh shouting directly broke the silence of the night, and also broke the delusion of the daimyo of the Land of Fire about the victory of the war. People are always afraid of death, and for the daimyo of the Land of Fire who is in a high position and lives in luxury, his life is naturally more precious. After hearing the harsh shouting outside, a chill spread from the heart directly swept the whole body of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. In the previous wars, no matter how anxious the war situation was, each shinobi village maintained a certain restraint between each other, that is, they tried to put the battlefield in an area that is difficult for civilians to get close to, and didn't attack the political system of the country. So subconsciously, the daimyo of the Land of Fire didn't think that he would be attacked, he just thought that the worst situation is that Woodleaf will lose and pay a certain amount of compensation. But now, as the enemy of the Land of Fire, Amigakure has obviously given up such a bottom line, and began to directly and blatantly attack the political leader of the Land of Fire, the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Fear swept the heart of the daimyo of the Land of Fire in an instant. The daimyo now wants to open the door of his room and let all his guards come to his side to protect his safety, but the reason in the daimyo's heart is constantly reminding him that he must not expose his position at will. The daimyo of the Land of Fire has experienced a lot of things, but most of his experiences are political games. This kind of killing without spilling blood is the most familiar thing to the daimyo of the Land of Fire. But now, the way the daimyo of the Land of Fire is completely unacceptable to the daimyo of the Land of Fire. A thin layer of sweat has been attached to the daimyo's forehead because of fear and tension. In order to prevent himself from screaming, the daimyo of the Land of Fire even covered his mouth with his hand. The originally elegant and lazy sitting posture had disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the daimyo of the Fire Nation directly fell to the ground. His body was slightly curled up. Obviously, he wanted to use this method to give himself some sense of security. Finally, after suffering from the fear in his heart for a long time, the shouting outside his room gradually subsided. The daimyo of the Land of Fire's ears are very keen to catch the footsteps in the corridor outside his room. This kind of footsteps can only be made by people who are used to the palace for a long time. The daimyo of the Land of Fire knew that the guards or servants of the palace came, so he quickly sat up from the posture of falling on the ground, tidying up his clothes and hair. There is no trace of the frightened appearance just now. Just after the daimyo of the Land of Fire tidied up, the door of the daimyo's room was gently knocked. The daimyo slightly cleared his throat and said to the door with a rather solemn and noble voice, "Come in." Hearing the voice of the daimyo, the door of the room was slowly pushed open. 2 blood-soaked guards and a group of servants from the palace walked into the room and knelt on the ground. Their armors were slightly damaged and they were covered in blood. Chapter 558. This humble servant greets your majesty. This humble servant greets your majesty. A group of guards and servants kowtowing in front of the daimyo of the Land of Fire shouted together to the daimyo of the Land of Fire, but after hearing such a shout, the daimyo of the Land of Fire looked very indifferent, as if the person who was scared out of his wits before wasn't him. In an understatement, the daimyo of the Land of Fire said to the guards and servants who were kowtowing in front of him, "Get up." Hearing the words of the daimyo, the 2 guards who had been kowtowing in front of the daimyo with slightly damaged armor stood up from their kowtowing posture. As for the other servants with lower statuses, they maintained their kneeling posture and retreated to both sides of the room. Reporting to your majesty, just now this humble servant discovered an unknown ninja who forced his way into your majesty's bedroom. After the verbal warning didn't work, this humble servant immediately led the guards of the Land of Fire to stop this ninja. After a battle, this assassin was finally killed. I hope your majesty won't be frightened by this humble servant's failure of duty. These 2 people wearing armor are not ordinary soldiers, they have the ability to fight ninjas, but they are not strong people who came out of the ninja village. The daimyo of the Land of Fire is reluctant to regard them as lowly servants. Even if these 2 guards seem to be asking for punishment, the daimyo will never blame them. Instead, he will go up and constantly appease them. Sure enough, the daimyo of the Land of Fire slowly stood up from where he was originally sitting. He walked to the front of the 2 guards and said to them with a kind smile, "Sir, I'm here to help you. The 2 of you don't have to be like this. Encountering such a thing is unexpected. Fortunately, with the joint efforts of the 2 of you, in the future, the enemy will be killed. This is already a very good record. How can I pick bones in an egg and criticize the 2 of you?" The words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire fell into the ears of the 2 guards. Naturally, they were very happy. Looking at the expression on the faces of the 2 guards, the daimyo knew that he has successfully won a wave of people's hearts. He reached into his bosom and took out a high-grade silk handkerchief. Then, he slowly pressed the handkerchief in his hand onto the blood-stained armor. It seemed like he was wiping the armor for the 2 guards. As people with a certain level of skill, the 2 guards naturally noticed the movement of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Before the daimyo of the Land of Fire really wiped his armor, the 2 guards immediately knelt on the ground and said to the daimyo of the Land of Fire, "Your Majesty, the 2 of us was lucky enough to be favored by your Majesty, and we were able to work in your Majesty's palace. With a high salary, we can enjoy a luxurious life. This kind of life is the daimyo of the Land of the Land of the Land of the Land of Fire. To be able to receive such treatment from your Majesty, we are already in fear and trepidation. How can we let your Majesty personally wipe our armor for us, and let your precious body be tainted?" After listening to the words of the 2 guards, the daimyo still squatted down by himself. He took the white, exquisitely embroidered handkerchief in his hand and began to wipe the 2 guards who were half kneeling in front of him. After wiping a few times, the originally white handkerchief was already stained with blood. When they saw the highest leader of the Land of the Fire personally wipe their armor, the feelings of gratitude directly filled the hearts of the 2 guards. There was a faint feeling of tears in their eyes. Feeling that he had done enough, the daimyo pinched his handkerchief in his hand and slowly stood up from his squatting position. He then said to the 2 guards half kneeling in front of him, don't worry, I'm sorry. This daimyo is just a scholar without the strength to truss a chicken. Because of the promising ancestors, I have the opportunity to inherit the position of the daimyo of the land of fire. Since the succession, this daimyo has been questioning myself. How can I become the daimyo of such a great country? In terms of thesis, there are countless civil officials in the land of fire who are better than me. In terms of martial arts, I can't even wield a long sword a few times. How can such a person be a qualified daimyo? After thinking carefully, I finally came to a conclusion. The daimyo of the land of fire slowly paced in front of the two half-kneeling guards in front of him. His face was full of worry for the people of the land of fire. Although I am not proficient in literature and martial arts, but after careful consideration, I found that I can still do something. I am not proficient in literature, but I can let every scholar in the land of fire be able to use their pen and ink to their heart's content. I am not proficient in martial arts, but I can let all the martial artists in the land of fire be able to get the respect they deserve. With that, the daimyo looked at the two guards half-kneeling in front of him. Both of you are the best among the many martial artists in the land of fire. Even without the same environment as the ninja village, you can still cultivate to such a level. It can't be said that you are talented. More importantly, you're still willing to serve under me. You fought to guard me, you were injured to protect me. How can I stand by and watch you coldly because of such a dirty thing? The daimyo's words were full of emotion, and even his eyes were filled with tears. The daimyo of the land of fire has become like this, not to mention the two low-born martial artists who are half-kneeling in front of the daimyo of the land of fire. Chapter 559. In the tense period of preparation for the war, an uninvited guest came to Woodleaf Village. The status of this uninvited guest seems to be very high. Even the leader of Woodleaf Village, Yondame Watergate, the fourth Hokage, personally came to greet him with a hat that represents his identity as the Hokage. Looking at the palanquin, which was deliberately reduced in decorations, but still looked expensive, carried slowly by 16 strong men, Watergate's expression hidden under the hat became very serious. Today, in order to meet such a character, Watergate brought almost all the high-end combat forces that can be transferred here. Watergate is very clear, anyone can face the risk, but only this person must not have the slightest accident. Finally, under the support of 16 strong men, the luxurious palanquin came to Watergate. As the leader of Woodleaf Village, Watergate went directly to the palanquin, and personally opened the curtain in front of the palanquin for the person sitting in it. The curtain in front of the palanquin was slowly opened, and the person sitting in it also revealed his face. Slightly unhealthy white skin, slightly old appearance, this person is the real ruler of the land of fire, daimyo of the land of fire. Although nominally, the status of the land of fire and the Hokage of Woodleaf Village is the same, after all, Woodleaf Village is rooted in the land of fire, and in theory, it is under the rule of the daimyo of the land of fire. Before, Woodleaf Village suffered great damage because of the invasion of the 6 Paths of Pain, and it was also with the help of the daimyo of the land of fire that they were able to recover from the damage so quickly. So at this moment, although Watergate's behavior of personally opening the curtain for the daimyo of the land of fire seems a bit undignified, but it is not incomprehensible. If it was normal times, seeing Watergate so humble, the daimyo of the land of fire will certainly not let go of such an opportunity to show his charm as a leader. But at this moment, the expression of the daimyo of the land of fire is very unnatural. Watergate is very keen to capture a trace of unconcealable fear from the eyes of the daimyo of the land of fire. Was the information that he had received all this time true? That's right, as the military force of the Fire Nation, Watergate naturally heard about the invasion of foreign enemies. However, due to the Fire Nation's identity, Woodleaf Village couldn't put such a high-ranking person on their monitoring list. Therefore, the information obtained by Watergate was actually incomplete. He only knew that Akatsuki seemed to have broken their long-standing practice, and began to attack some people in the political system without military force. Fourth Hokage, Daimyo came out from his palanquin, and deeply looked at Bofong Watergate. And when he determined that the person standing in front of him was the one who had created countless brilliant achievements, and had personally defeated the former leader of Akatsuki organization, Six Paths Pain, his expression finally relaxed a little. "Your Majesty," Watergate took a few steps back, bowed respectfully to the daimyo of the country of fire, then stepped forward and said, "I have also heard about the things that happened in the past few days. Now, all the people present are the elites of our Woodleaf village, so daimyo doesn't have to worry about your own safety. Please come with me, and after we reach a safe place, we will discuss how to solve the recent problems." Daimyo of the Fire Nation heard Watergate's words, and looked around at the ninjas standing around him. Most of these ninjas are people who have made a name for themselves in the ninja world, and Daimyo of the Fire Nation also knows many familiar faces, and even people who have names and nicknames. Although Daimyo of the Fire Nation has always had a certain amount of trust in his guards, but during this period of time, he has been attacked more than once. Although such attacks were resisted by his guards again and again, but at the same time, it also made Daimyo of the Fire Nation a little uneasy about the ability of his guards. Now that he can see so many strong people of the shinobi world standing beside him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire also slowly relaxed from his originally hanging posture. "Fourth Hokage, please lead the way. I'm really tired these days." Even if daimyo didn't say it, Watergate can very keenly judge from his face and expression. At this moment, daimyo obviously hasn't slept well for a long time. Watergate can roughly judge the level of daimyo of the Fire Nation's guards. If an ordinary jonin encounters such a team of guards, Minato can guarantee that he will lose without a doubt. After all, this is a team that the daimyo of the Land of Fire used their huge wealth to create. Their armor and weapons were even custom-made at a high price from the Land of Iron, the only remaining samurai in the shinobi world. But after going through the attacks of Akatsuki organization, more than half of the members of this group of guards were actually reduced. It seems that Akatsuki organization really didn't just launch a tentative attack on daimyo of the Fire Nation, but they really want to put daimyo of the Fire Nation to death. But Watergate knows that such a place is not suitable to talk about such things. So, forcibly suppressing the confusion in his heart, Watergate very respectfully led daimyo of the Fire Nation to the place he had prepared to rest. Not long after, Watergate took daimyo of the Fire Nation to a place that looks very luxuriously decorated. Here was originally the property of a very famous businessman in the Woodleaf village, but not long ago, after an investigation by Umbu, they suddenly found that this businessman seems to have an unclear relationship with Akatsuki organization, so this businessman was directly taken away by Umbu, and this magnificent property was directly left behind. But at this moment, daimyo of the Fire Nation didn't have the time to check how exquisite the garden in this property is, and how colorful the dugong is. After daimyo of the Fire Nation arrived inside the house, he immediately fell on the sofa, and the fatigue of his whole body seemed to have reached the peak at this moment. Looking at the sleepy face of daimyo of the Fire Nation, Watergate tentatively said to daimyo of the Fire Nation, "Your Majesty is tired from the long journey, you might as well take a rest first. Anyway, you can fully trust that we can guarantee your safety here. At least 3 jonin will be around your room to protect you, and we will also arrange a certain number of umbu to investigate your surrounding environment at all times." Hearing Watergate's words, daimyo of the Fire Nation finally nodded tiredly after thinking for a while, and with the help of his servant, he walked towards the bedroom of this house. Chapter 560. When the daimyo of the Land of Fire fell on the bed, he fell into a deep sleep almost instantly. After seeing that the daimyo had fallen asleep, the servants also retreated from the room one by one and stood outside the door, slowly waiting for their master to call them. At the moment, Watergate was already standing with the guard leader of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Watergate made a gesture to invite the guard leader to sit beside him. Originally, the guard leader's heart was still a little nervous. After all, in terms of status, Watergate, the 4th Hokage, is at the same level as the daimyo. For most people, Minato was a living legend, and such a legend suddenly invited him, who was only a little famous, to sit with him. The guard leader was so excited that words couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. But in the face of Minato's amiable smile, the nervousness in the guard leader's heart slowly subsided. The guard leader plucked up his courage and sat opposite to Watergate, then said to Watergate cautiously, "Hokage-sama. Do you have any orders?" Hearing the rather nervous words of the guard leader, Minato smiled amiably at the guard leader and said, "That's right. It's nothing, you don't have to be nervous. To put it bluntly, you and I are actually both warriors, it's just that the direction of our development is not the same. But as a warrior, that kind of straightforward heart is the same. The reason why I called you over is not to question or criticize you, but simply to ask your daimyo what he experienced. What did you guys go through?" Watergate's words were very sincere, he didn't mean to put on airs at all. The guard leader sitting opposite to Watergate was very comfortable listening to him. Under the deliberate guidance of Watergate, his thoughts gradually immersed in the almost endless attacks he experienced in the past period of time. The guard leader slowly spoke to Watergate about the battles he experienced as the leader of the daimyo's guards, but the more he listened, the more Watergate felt the matter was strange. As a ninja, Watergate was very clear that if a ninja really wants to kill or capture his mission target, he will stop at nothing. Hiding his true identity, sneaking in, drugging, assassination are all common things for a ninja. But listening to the description of the guard leader, it seems that all the members of Akatsuki organization who have been attacking the daimyo of the Land of Fire during this period of time, almost all of them directly fought with the guards. And it seems after the battle, the attackers from Akatsuki organization even directly wore the Akatsuki organization's trademark black uniform with red clouds. They didn't pursue killing a few people, only pursuing how bloody and terrible the scene was. Such a method of action was truly strange to the extreme. And the strangest thing is, except for the first time we defeated the enemy and left the enemy's head, every time after we killed the enemy's body was very strange and directly integrated into the soil and disappeared. Originally, Watergate was just quietly listening to the guard leader retelling the events that happened during this period of time, but suddenly Watergate heard such a sentence. Watergate immediately ended his long silence and said to the guard leader, "Wait. You mean you left the enemy's head? Can you let me take a look?" Hearing Watergate's words, although the guard leader was a little confused, he nodded and said to Watergate, "Of course, I will bring you the enemy's head that we have kept. To be honest, this person's appearance is really strange, although I have seen a lot of strange things, but the appearance of this enemy is really strange." After that, the guard leader walked towards the place where the guards were stationed outside. After a while, the guard leader came in with a box. Putting the enemy's head in the box in front of Watergate, the guard leader opened the box for Watergate. Watergate looked at the wooden box, and the enemy's face appeared in front of Watergate. Watergate had a very systematic understanding of the composition of the members of Akatsuki organization, so he naturally knew this person with a strange face, because this person's appearance was exactly the same as the half-black half-white Zetsu in the information. The only difference was that this Zetsu's whole face was white, without any black part. Zetsu? Hearing Watergate suddenly call out such a name, the guard leader was a little surprised. "Hokage-sama, do you know this person?" Watergate nodded, then said to the guard leader, "Indeed, this person was actually mentioned in the information collected by Woodleaf. However, it doesn't match the physical characteristics in our data. I'm not sure what's going on now. I don't know if I can take this head temporarily and give it to the people of our ninja village to study." Hearing Watergate's inquiry, in fact, the guard leader wanted to directly agree. But after all, such a thing involves the daimyo of the Land of Fire, so the guard leader couldn't immediately respond to Watergate's inquiry at the moment. Obviously, Watergate also saw the entanglement in the guard leader's heart at the moment, and quickly reacted and said to the guard leader, "Of course, this is not a matter of a short time, it's not too late to talk about these things after His Majesty has rested." Hearing Watergate's words, the guard leader's face, which was originally very entangled, became slightly better. "I still have a lot of things to deal with, please protect His Majesty. After His Majesty has rested, inform me to come and discuss with His Majesty." Watergate looked at the guard leader and said to him, and the guard leader also understood and respectfully saluted Watergate. "That's natural, please rest assured Hokage-sama." Looking at the guard leader, Watergate smiled and directly walked out of this exquisite courtyard specially prepared for the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Watergate didn't rush to his office. Instead, he slowly walked on the street of Woodleaf and began to think about the Akatsuki's current behavior. In fact, not only the Land of Fire's daimyo, several other villages also sent their country's daimyo to Woodleaf, and the Akatsuki was very deliberately, almost provocatively attacked them. What's the benefit of such behavior? Watergate couldn't understand it for a while, because this will only make the countries more united against a common enemy, and the Akatsuki didn't seem to have the slightest benefit. Chapter 561. Yandame-sama, I'm really sorry that we have to meet for such a reason. When I first came to Woodleaf, because I was too tired, I had to ask you to forgive me for resting for so many days. The Land of Fire daimyo sat in his seat and looked at Watergate, who was sitting opposite him with a slightly apologetic look. In fact, the Land of Fire daimyo's heart was also a little nervous. After all, when he recalled his attitude when he first came to Woodleaf, he felt that if someone treated him like that, he would have a grudge in his heart. After all, it wasn't Watergate's fault that he was attacked, but when he came to Woodleaf to seek protection from Watergate. Watergate also directly greeted him with a large group of powerful ninjas, and in a hurry, he also prepared a courtyard that was worthy of his identity as a place to rest. Watergate has done a good job, but his attitude toward Watergate is indeed a little too arrogant. As the leader of the most powerful military organization in the country, Watergate's status is the same as his, and he doesn't have to cater to his responsibilities. In order to relieve the anxiety in his heart, and also to let Minato do his best to protect him in the future, the daimyo of the Fire Country actually lowered himself very much. This could be heard from the daimyo's words just now. Watergate has been a Hokage for so many years, so he is naturally very clear about these psychological changes. Although the Land of Fire daimyo at this moment is very humble, but that's just because the Land of Fire daimyo succumbed to the fear in his heart. It's not something that can be relied on. Watergate also very humbly said to the Land of Fire daimyo, "Your Majesty doesn't have to worry about it, this is human nature." As the Land of Fire daimyo, you naturally don't often encounter such frightening things. And your experience from your palace all the way to Woodleaf Village, I also know a little about it from your guard leader. Woodleaf Village is also a part of the Land of Fire. As a member of the many people of the Land of Fire, naturally, we have to step forward for the sake of the Land of Fire. Protecting the Land of Fire daimyo is also the responsibility and obligation of our Woodleaf Village. The Land of Fire daimyo quietly listened to Watergate's words, although Watergate's words are quite political, but as the head of the political system of the Land of Fire, this way of speaking is the most acceptable to the daimyo. The daimyo's face showed a somewhat gratified smile. Apparently he understood the meaning of Watergate's words. The daimyo didn't continue this topic with Watergate, because just now Watergate's words was actually a promise to himself. Protecting his safety is Watergate's task. As two smart people, in fact, they don't need to speak so clearly between each other. A little bit of pointers is enough for them to understand each other. Hokage-sama, I have read the battle plan you submitted to me before more than once or twice during this time, although I dare not say that I fully understand what kind of position Hokage-sama is going to put Woodleaf Village in this shinobi world war, and what kind of benefits you want the Land of Fire to obtain from it. But I think I have already found 3 of them. All the plans are very good, rigorous and operable. But I still feel that it's a little insufficient. In the shinobi world, the military and political affairs of a country are actually separated. The daimyo is responsible for government affairs, and the village leader is responsible for military affairs. Under normal circumstances, unless there was a request from one of the parties, there would be no overstepping their boundaries. But at this moment, the daimyo of the Land of Fire obviously broke such a rule, and began to express his opinion on the military planning of Woodleaf Village. Hearing the daimyo's words, Watergate's eyes also vaguely showed a bit of interest. Although Watergate tried to hide the interest in his eyes, the daimyo of the Land of Fire still caught the slightly disrespectful interest in Watergate's eyes from Watergate's eyes and expression. If other people dared to do such a disrespectful behavior to him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire will definitely flip the table and leave on the spot, and if this person's status is not high enough, he may directly kill this guy. But at this moment, the person sitting opposite him, to put it nicely, is the person he is asking for protection, and to put it bluntly, if this person really has any disloyalty, with a little effort, he can directly change the position of the daimyo. This is the shinobi world, this is a big country, even if your status is high, once a powerful person wants to make a move on you, they can find enough loopholes to deal with you. Resisting the discomfort in his heart, the daimyo then said to Watergate, in this plan, in the last appendix, the benefits that can be obtained after the victory of the war are mentioned. Some of them are naturally very exciting, such as the long-term peace of the shinobi world, and the equal trade between the 5 major countries. But I still feel that there is something missing, and that is the punishment for the Rain country. I don't want our shinobi to fight a hard battle, and shed their blood for something that sounds good but is very empty. You don't want the shinobi to get nothing? You don't want yourself, you don't want your country to get nothing, right? Looking at the impassioned words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, he directly put himself in the position of all shinobi. But at this moment, the greed in the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire was so obvious, so undisguised. Of course, the daimyo is looking forward to victory, of course, he is looking forward to the Land of Fire being the leader of the 5 major countries. But now, what the daimyo needs more is a vigorous battle, a good enough result, and a great achievement that is enough to leave his name in history. With excitement in his eyes, the daimyo clenched his fists and looked at Watergate with eagerness. In fact, such post-war negotiations have never been the responsibility of the Ninja Village as an armed organization, but the Land of Fire sent its own political talents and negotiators to reach this agreement. But due to the dual system of the country, the daimyo of the Land of Fire had to ask for the opinion of Watergate. And Watergate, as the supreme leader of the country's armed forces, is naturally the gardener who personally cultivated such an extraordinary result. The Land of Rain? Obviously, in the words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire just now, he emphasized the 3 words of the Land of Rain. Watergate can feel the almost fanatical pursuit in the eyes of the daimyo when he said these 3 words. Of course, the sharp-minded Watergate also understood the mind of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Is it really the temptation that every person in a high position can't resist? Chapter 562. In the Akatsuki's base, Black Zetsu was standing in front of the huge Geto-mazo in a daze. He casually glanced at the thick vines extending from the Geto-mazo's body. On these vines, there was a slightly shriveled flower bud that was used to nurture White Zetsu's clone. Just as Black Zetsu was casually glancing at the flower bud, suddenly, the originally shriveled and yellow flower bud was no longer shriveled and yellow, and even the shriveled state began to slowly fill up. Under the slightly dim light, one could vaguely see the human figure inside. Seeing that the originally shriveled flower bud was filled up again, Black Zetsu slowly walked to the foot of the Geto-mazo and pressed his hand on the body of the Geto-mazo. Chakra was transmitted from Black Zetsu's body to the Geto-mazo, and the Geto-mazo directly transmitted the chakra to the Geto-mazo. After a while, under the unrestrained supply of chakra from Black Zetsu, the Geto-mazo directly became mature. The petals of the Geto-mazo opened, and a naked White Zetsu's clone jumped out of the Geto-mazo. As if he didn't feel anything strange about being naked, this White Zetsu directly walked to the front of Black Zetsu and directly knelt down. "Greetings, Jetsu-sama." Black Zetsu didn't know whether this White Zetsu's clone was paying respect to the main body of White Zetsu or Black Zetsu. Anyway, Black Zetsu looked at the half-kneeling White Zetsu's clone and said coldly, "What's the situation?" When the White Zetsu's clone heard Black Zetsu's question, he lowered his head even more because he wanted to appear more respectful. Reporting to Jetsu-sama, during this period of time, I and the other 4 White Zetsu's clone have been attacking the daimyo of the 5 major countries day and night. The daimyo of the Land of Fire that I am responsible for has reached the Woodleaf village at this moment, and the other daimyo of several countries seem to be about to be unable to support the ninja villages of their countries. In order to ensure that their own country's Kage would not be attacked by us in the coming war, they would definitely gather all of them together. And because of our unconventional actions this time, the ninjas of the 5 major countries will definitely be excited, and in the following battle, they will definitely be more united to buy time for us. Although White Zetsu's doppelganger had only said a few short sentences, it had revealed all of Black Zetsu's plans. Obviously, such continuous attacks on the daimyo of the 5 major countries were not arranged by Uchiha Obito, but by Black Zetsu's own decision. White Zu's clone was also very loyal to Black Zu. He obeyed Black Zu's orders. Just as Watergate thought before, the purpose of Black Zetsu doing this is to make the ninjas of the 5 major countries more united against a common enemy. After all, even if they look down on the daimyo of their country, once the daimyo of their country has an accident, it is no different from directly slapping the face of the ninjas of each country. No ninja would allow such a thing to happen. At this moment, what Black Zetsu was looking forward to was not the so-called victory at all. What Black Zetsu needed at this moment was the most abundant and most tense time. Black Zetsu glanced at White Zetsu's doppelganger, who was half kneeling in front of him, and slowly put his hand on the head of White Zetsu's doppelganger. Chakra continued to pour into the head of White Zetsu's doppelganger. White Zetsu's doppelganger, who was still quite intelligent, at this moment, his eyes became dull almost in an instant. White Zetsu's doppelganger is just a consumable for Black Zetsu. The reason why he chose this doppelganger of White Zetsu's doppelganger to carry out his plan is only because this doppelganger has the strength of an elite jonin after being transformed by Kabuto Yakushi. Now that his task has been completed, he can no longer keep the consciousness that he has deliberately cultivated. Recently, Black Zetsu can clearly feel that because of some of his previous actions, whether intentional or unintentional, Uchiha Obito has become vigilant against him. At this moment, Kabuto, who wanted to prove his worth through all kinds of things, was staring at him like a mad dog. Although he wasn't afraid of Kabuto and Uchiha Obito joining hands, in such a critical period, it was better to have less trouble than more trouble. As for the remaining 4 White Zetsu's doppelganger, once they force all the daimyo of the 5 major countries to the ninja villages of his country, Black Zetsu will also make a move on them and erase all their intelligence. Anyway, in the army of 100,000 White Zetsu, only 5 White Zetsu's doppelganger are a little abnormal. It is not easy to attract attention. Black Zetsu's doppelganger, who was half kneeling in front of him, waved his hand gently, and with a slightly dull expression, directly merged into the soil under Black Zetsu's control to join the rest of the White Zetsu's army. Black Zetsu looked at the Geto Mazo standing in front of him, and his eyes slightly drifted. Mother-sama. Soon, you will be able to resurrect from a long sleep. Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara. Humph, they are just chess pieces in my hands. Black Zetsu's eyes were full of indifference and coldness at this moment. It seems that in order to achieve his goal, Black Zetsu can do anything. From the ancient times to the present, Black Zetsu has been like this step by step. He slowly turned from immaturity to maturity, and from maturity to wily and astute. Even now, such a war that swept the entire shinobi world is nothing more than a game of chess for Black Zetsu. People in the world think that they can control their own destiny. They are constantly fighting. Some people succeed and are regarded as heroes, some people fail and are regarded as devils. But these so-called successes and failures all came from the secret manipulation of one person. This person is Black Zetsu. Wandering in the torrent of history, he became the powerful support behind every hero, and the whisper of every devil in the ears of every devil king. A pair of hands, holding both black and white. All the creatures in the world are just playthings in his hands. And Black Zetsu has only one purpose, and that is to bring his mother back to this world. Chapter 563. Black Zetsu's secret plan was gradually completed with the passage of time. As the daimyo of the 5 major countries, no one was reckless. When the kage of the 5 major ninja villages noticed that the Akatsuki had begun to move against the kage of their country, they also came up with a plan together. That is, gather all the daimyo of the 5 major countries in a secret place, and then send elite ninjas to protect the political leaders of these 5 countries. After all, now is the edge of the outbreak of war, the combat power of every ninja village is precious. In order to protect the daimyo of their country, they must send one or even several ninjas who are strong enough to protect the daimyo, in addition to occupying a lot of ordinary ninja resources. In order to ensure the smooth progress of the war, the kage of the 5 major ninja villages finally found a very secret place after a discussion, and sent an appropriate amount of ninjas to protect the daimyo of their country. After experiencing such a thing, almost every ninja in the shinobi village was quite excited. So although a part of the combat power was occupied for no reason, it was not a loss. Let's put all the actions of the 5 major countries and the internal actions of the Akatsuki aside. The 2 people who played an important role in this war, the 9 Tails Column Force, Uzumaki Naruto, and the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, also came to a secret place in the Land of Lightning. This place is the place where the 4th Raikage AI said can let Naruto master the power of the 9 tails in his body. Yo, we came to this place, this is the place to get power. As long as you can complete the training, you can become super strong. Oh yeah, Killer Bee looked at the familiar scene in front of him and said to Naruto, who was standing next to him, in his own strange tone. Although Killer Bee's way of speaking was very strange, Naruto gradually began to adapt to Killer Bee's way of speaking after getting along with him along the way. After all, although Killer Bee looks very wild and unruly, in fact, he is a very easy person to get along with. How could Naruto reject such a person in his heart? Instead of talking to Killer Bee, Naruto turned his head and began to carefully observe the place where he could master the power of 9 tails. This place looked more like an altar with a long history. Many broken stone pillars and some broken sculptures were silently telling Killer Bee and Whirlpool Naruto about the long history of this place. There were also many places in the ruins that had some totems and murals that people couldn't understand. Naruto couldn't help but lift his feet and walk around the ruins. Finally, a relatively complete mural appeared in front of Naruto. The mural looked a little abstract, but for some reason, Naruto unexpectedly understood the meaning of the mural. It was a very tall and unusual figure. This figure was outlined with black paint, and in the hand of the figure was a circular staff. Around the figure were circles of light and shadow outlined with gold and white, making people feel that this person didn't seem to belong to this world. On the contrary, it was more like a feeling of transcendence. Of course, what attracted Naruto's attention the most was the black figure's eyes, which were painted with white and purple ripples at the same time. Naruto recognized this pair of eyes, because this pair of eyes was the eyes of the person who made Naruto face his weakness. Sage of the 6 Paths, Naruto's mouth couldn't help but murmur the name of this legendary figure. This pair of eyes were the eyes of the leader of Akatsuki, Pain, who destroyed almost the entire village of Konoha with his own strength, and brought the biggest disaster to Konoha since the establishment of the village, the legendary eyes of Immortal, Rinnegan. Naruto didn't know if it was his own illusion or something else, but he always felt that the eyes of the Sage of the 6 Paths in this mural were not as empty as in the painting. Instead, he felt like he was being stared at by this person. This feeling didn't make Naruto feel strange or uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was very peaceful, as if he had met a very close person. This kind of intimacy from the heart couldn't be faked. Yo 9 Tails boy, what are you doing? Our situation is very urgent. Master your power, and we will go to the battlefield. Oh yeah, Killer Bee, the Hachibi Column Force, saw that Naruto was in a daze, so he walked to the side of Naruto and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. He wanted to remind Naruto that they didn't have enough time. Naruto was patted by Killer Bee, and his whole body trembled involuntarily, like a person who fell into a half-awake state. After Naruto's body trembled, he also recovered from the shock. He looked at the wall where the very clear mural he had been looking at just now, it turned into a wall made of stone bricks. As for the mural that Naruto felt very familiar just now, at this moment, it was completely gone. Although there were some doubts in his heart, Naruto knew that now was not the time for him to worry about this situation. Looking at Killer Bee standing opposite him, Naruto nodded and said to Killer Bee, "You're right. Let's go. You are right, the current ninja world needs our strength, now is not the time to worry about some trivial things. What are we going to do next?" Seeing that Naruto was serious, Killer Bee also began to explain to Naruto the role of this ruin. Because of their willingness to be sealed, in fact, most of the tailed beasts are very irritable. Few tailed beasts can recover their calm attitude and communicate effectively with column force. But to fully master the power of the tailed beast in his body, the most important thing is to get the approval of the tailed beast in his body. In this lookout, there is a small space attached to it. In this space, the spiritual power of the tailed beast will be independent and coexist with the ninja as column force. The two sides can fight and communicate. If they fight, then one side will completely occupy the spiritual power of the other side. If they communicate, then it is the first step to fully master the power of the tailed beast in their body. Hey Nine Tails boy, you have to lift the seal when you get the power. Enter this space, open your seal, meet the powerful Nine Tails, and become the strongest column force. Oh yeah, with that, Killer Bee stretched out his hand and pointed out the path leading to the small space for Naruto. It was a relief wall that looked quite complete. When it did not use the Hachibi's chakra, although it could feel some pressure, it was still barely able to withstand it. But when it used the Hachibi's chakra in its body, the power that was originally instinctively releasing its aura seemed to have found its target at this moment. It began to release its powerful aura towards Killer Bee with hostility. This feeling. It's really that stinky fox. After sensing this aura, the Hachibi that had been sleeping in column force's body also woke up from its slumber. Soon, Hachibi also noticed that his Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, was under the pressure of Kyuubi's killing intent, so he hurriedly said to Killer Bee, "Kill him. Bee, withdraw my chakra. Nine Tails and I have always been in a competitive relationship. He doesn't accept me, and I don't accept him." Originally, he was only releasing his aura instinctively, but when you started to use my chakra, he could also feel my aura. Facing his old enemy, no matter what state he is in, he will definitely do his best to show his strength. Hearing the words of the Hachibi in his body, Killer Bee also immediately withdrew the chakra from his body. Sure enough, when Killer Bee completely converged the Bija chakra in his body, the pressure that was originally exerted on his body disappeared as if it had lost its target. Killer Bee finally had a chance to observe Naruto's state at the moment. When the chakra in his body was no longer tightly guarded by the seal on his body, the originally very violent Nine Tails chakra surged wildly in his body like a runaway horse. Naruto immediately began to use the method of controlling the chakra that his mother taught him. Relying on his huge chakra, he began to integrate his chakra into the Nine Tails chakra at all costs. Gradually, a little bit of the Nine Tails chakra began to be controlled by Naruto. Using this strand of Nine Tails chakra as a primer, Naruto began to slowly straighten out the violent chakra in his body. And because of the violent increase of the Nine Tails chakra in his body, Naruto's figure also became the same as when he mobilized the Nine Tails chakra. His blue pupils turned scarlet and his teeth became wild. But at this moment, Naruto's eyes were very clear. Obviously, he was not affected by the chakra in his body too much. Looking at Naruto's state at the moment, Killer Bee, who was originally not so confident in his heart, couldn't help but feel a little confident in his heart. After all, at this moment, Naruto did not enter the small space that suppressed the tailed beasts to a certain extent, but he could control the violent chakra in his body with his own ability. So once Naruto entered this small space, with the help of the space, Naruto still had a great chance to extract the power of the tailed beast in his body and control the Nine Tails chakra. Chapter 565. Ignoring Killer Bee's gaze, Naruto walked towards the relief sculpture in front of him step by step. At this moment, there was an uncontrollable desire in Naruto's heart for no reason. It was a desire for power, but also a desire for freedom. Naruto didn't know whether such an emotion came from his own heart, but such a desire was so hard to suppress. He slowly pressed his hand on the relief sculpture, and a strange power fluctuation emerged from the relief sculpture. The power fluctuation penetrated into Naruto's body the moment it was produced. Naruto felt that every cell in his body was resonating in a strange way under the influence of this power fluctuation. Naruto felt like he was suddenly drenched from head to toe with cold spring water during the dog days of summer. The strange sense of comfort, the sense of freedom from the shackles, made Naruto's whole body relax involuntarily. At the moment when Naruto involuntarily relaxed under the influence of the power fluctuation, a gravitational force suddenly appeared from the relief sculpture. After Naruto's relaxed body received this gravitational force, he immediately rushed in the direction of the relief sculpture. At this moment, the relief sculpture seemed to become illusory. Naruto's hand, which was originally pressed on it, slowly melted into it. After a while, Naruto's entire body had entered the relief sculpture. Seeing that Naruto had entered the relief sculpture, Killer Bee also nodded slowly and sat where he was originally standing. All he could do now was to patiently wait for the result of the game between Naruto and Nine Tails. He had already done everything he could to help Naruto on the way here. Now, all he had to rely on was Naruto's own ability and luck. When Naruto entered this small space, he had completely lost consciousness. Naruto's body slowly floated in the nothingness space, and the energy with the ancient breath also slowly rushed into Naruto's body. This energy with ancient aura rushed toward Naruto's head as soon as it entered his body. This aura was the same as the one that helped Sasuke release Kodo Amatsukami after he was controlled by Kodo Amatsukami. As the energy continued to gather towards Naruto's head, Naruto's spirit was finally completely immersed in his own spiritual space. This was a very familiar scene, a place that was quite like a sewer, exuding a cold and damp rotten smell. Naruto has been to this place more than once, because this was the place where Nine Tails was sealed. But unlike before, the water that could only reach his ankles had now directly submerged Naruto's shoulders. At this moment, Naruto was very clear about where he wanted to go. He controlled his body to slowly float up, and instinctively moved his chakra to stand directly on the water as usual. But unlike what Naruto imagined, he didn't stand on the water as usual. Instead, after treading on the water for a while, he fell into the water again. It seems that I can't use my treading technique here. Naruto quickly realized the reason why he couldn't tread on the water, but he wasn't discouraged. He directly used his arms to paddle the water and swam towards the place where Nine Tails was sealed. Soon, a very tall iron gate appeared in front of Naruto. The iron gate, which was originally densely covered with talismans, was now only left with the last and largest talisman. Human. Kyuubi seemed to have sensed Naruto's aura, or perhaps because the powerful seal binding him became weak. The moment he sensed Naruto's aura, Kyuubi behind the iron gate roared. At the same time, Nine Tails' huge head also appeared in front of Naruto. The flame-like gorgeous fur, scarlet beast eyes, and huge mouth all showed Naruto how dangerous it was standing in front of him. Nine Tails stared at Naruto in front of it. Its violent chakra overflowed from behind the iron gate. Like a red bubble, it quickly expelled all the sewage that was originally filled with sewage at this moment. The red bubble had almost covered the entire space of the sewer in an instant. A large part of Naruto's body was also covered by the red bubbles. The red bubbles were the manifestation of Nine Tails' chakra, so just like Nine Tails' chakra, it gave Naruto a strong burning sensation. It wasn't just the burning sensation. At this moment, Naruto's spirit was also bewitched by Nine Tails to a certain extent. The voice of Nine Tails kept appearing in Naruto's mind. Uncover it, uncover this talisman. Uncover this talisman, and you will obtain endless power. Uncover this talisman, and you will defeat all your enemies. Uncover this talisman, and the difficulty surrounding your heart will be solved. Nine Tails' bewitching voice kept ringing in Naruto's mind, but Naruto's eyes were exceptionally clear. Naruto's mouth seemed to be chanting something. Every time Naruto finished a sentence, the Nine Tails chakra that wrapped around Naruto faded a little. This was the chant that Shina Kushina taught Naruto after learning that the Nine Tails in Naruto's body had gone out of control. Although it couldn't completely suppress Nine Tails, this chant could protect the spirit of the person chanting it. If it were any other time, Naruto, who had recovered, would never get close to the Nine Tails seal. But now, Naruto came here to open the Nine Tails seal so that he could control the power of the Nine Tails. So Naruto still slowly walked towards the place where the seal talisman was located. Nine Tails could naturally feel that its bewitching didn't work, but when it saw Naruto walking towards it step by step, the pursuit of freedom still drove Nine Tails to slowly shape the chakra that it had released. Steps made of red foam appeared in front of Naruto, but Naruto wasn't afraid at all. Like a determined warrior about to charge into battle, he walked up the steps step by step. Finally, Naruto's figure had appeared in front of the seal talisman, and even a small corner of the huge seal talisman was uncovered. Nine Tails, who had been staring fiercely at Naruto, couldn't help but have some desire for freedom in its violent eyes. The seal was lifted. Chapter 566. Taking off the remaining talisman, the iron gate that sealed Nine Tails finally appeared in front of Naruto. In the position that was originally covered by the talisman, there was a round thing that looked like a door lock. Looking at this strangely shaped door lock, Naruto slowly looked at Nine Tails in the gate. Although the moment he noticed that Naruto was looking at him, Nine Tails restrained all the desire for freedom in his eyes, but Naruto could still see a trace of desire in Nine Tails' eyes. Who doesn't desire freedom? Even an unintelligent bird would instinctively fly towards the nearest tree the moment it was released from its cage, let alone a tailed beast that had intelligence in its body. Speaking of which, what did the tailed beasts do wrong? They were sealed by human beings for most of the time. Just because their power was too great, just because human beings coveted their great power, the tailed beasts had to lose their most important freedom. Without freedom, they would rather die. For every person with intelligence or even a thinking life, freedom is the most precious thing. Did the tailed beasts really have such a strong hostility to human beings at the beginning of their birth? Did the tailed beasts really like to slaughter living creatures? Naruto didn't know, even many people who were proficient in the history of the shinobi world and even myths didn't know. All they could know was the story of the tailed beasts slaughtering the human world in the short hundreds of thousands of years. Naruto didn't know why, but there was a kind of pity in his heart when he looked at Nine Tails. Although he was threatened by Nine Tails more than once, and even when he used Nine Tails' chakra, he went berserk again and again. The tragedy of his childhood was even because of such a powerful tailed beast sealed in his body. It is undeniable that there was a time when Naruto resented the existence of such a creature in his body. But with the growth of age and the improvement of experience, Naruto found that he didn't hate the tailed beasts so much. The reason why he became the column force wasn't because of the tailed beast's will. So who else can he hate? The one who sealed the tailed beast in his body was his father, the masked man who released the tailed beast from his mother's body. After thinking about it for a while, Naruto was surprised to find that he couldn't treat anyone with resentment, because all of this seemed to be a script arranged by a pair of invisible hands. Everything appeared so just right and unexpected. So gradually, Naruto learned to accept his identity as the column force, and accept the fact that he couldn't resist the fact that it had happened to him. Although the Nine Tails is a tailed beast, it is also an animal. Perhaps due to its animal instincts, the Nine Tails could still sense human emotions. Moreover, the current Naruto almost didn't conceal the pity and grief in his eyes at all. In a trance, the Nine Tails even felt that Naruto's figure had quietly changed, turning into the extraordinary figure that stood in front of it like a god when it was still a child. It shook its head with all its might, expelling this ridiculous thought from its mind. Now isn't the time to think about such nonsense. Unlocking the seal and regaining my freedom is the most important thing. Naruto withdrew his gaze and looked at the door lock in front of him. Naruto stretched out his right hand in front of him and slowly opened his palm. There was obviously no fluctuation of chakra, but black runes suddenly drilled out from Naruto's palm. Black runes constantly condensed in Naruto's palm. If one observed carefully, it wouldn't be difficult to notice that these black runes that constantly appeared in Naruto's hand were the runes that rushed into Naruto's body from the scroll toad. The black runes constantly appeared in Naruto's palm. The black runes were like pieces of building blocks that constantly pieced together in Naruto's hand to form a shape. Finally, when the last rune was integrated into such a building block, a black object that looked a bit strange but was obviously a key appeared in Naruto's hand. Nine Tails. Naruto looked at the strange black key in his hand and cast his gaze at Nine Tails in the iron gate. I don't know what kind of mood I should have to face you now, but whether it is my heart or the current situation of the shinobi world, I have to choose to unlock your seal. You have been in my body all this time, so you should also know what is happening in the shinobi world through me. If Akatsuki wants to resurrect the Jubi, all 9 of you will be pulled out. Although I don't know if you are really pulled out, not only will I lose my life because of the Jubi, but you will also be able to maintain your independent will after being integrated into the Jubi. I'm not threatening you, I'm just stating such a fact to you objectively. Although I'm a little ashamed, I really don't want to lose my life like this, and I don't want the shinobi world to be shrouded in the void of Tsukuyomi space by Akatsuki. So, now I will unlock the last layer of the seal for you, and I will give you the choice of everything. In the end, you will fight side by side with me or both of us will suffer, I will leave it all to you. It has to be said that after being in contact with Watergate for so long, Naruto has become eloquent. Just like the tone used by Watergate to persuade others, there are not so many empty reasons, but objectively stating one fact after another, and providing a win-win choice for the other party. Ignoring the expression of Nine Tails who was obviously lost in thought, Naruto directly inserted the black key in his hand into the gate, and with the sound of the mechanism, the gate representing the last layer of the seal was finally opened. Almost in a blink of an eye, the dark sewer began to fade away like a painting that had been washed. When everything disappeared, Naruto and Nine Tails all appeared in a seemingly endless white space. Naruto finally saw the full appearance of Nine Tails this time. The huge figure with red fur and the swaying 9 tails behind him made Naruto feel the irrepressible powerful aura and elegant posture of 9 tails. Chapter 567. After staying in the cage for a long time, he returned to nature. Although this sentence can't completely describe the mood of 9 tails at this moment, it's not far from it. At this moment, 9 Tails doesn't know if it's because of freedom or some other reason, but he's not as violent and aggressive as he was when he was sealed in Naruto's body. Human, looking at Naruto in front of him, 9 Tails slowly said to Naruto, "I have to say, what you said just now really moved me. You are very smart, and you have already grasped what I desire the most at the moment you decided to negotiate with me." Freedom, what a tempting word. In front of Naruto, 9 Tails didn't hide his desire for freedom at this moment. After hearing the words of 9 Tails, Naruto's heart also slowly relaxed a little, because since 9 Tails can say such a thing, it at least proves one point, that is, there is a certain possibility of reaching a consensus with 9 Tails. So what is your decision? Looking at 9 Tails, Naruto said to him. Although I'm suppressed to a certain extent due to the seal in your body, I still have a certain level of perception towards the outside world. Of course, I understand how dangerous the outside world is, but you have ignored a very important point. Kyuubi's pair of beast eyes stared at Naruto, with a hint of contempt in his eyes. I myself have strength beyond most people in the shinobi world. Even if I leave you, I can survive in the shinobi world with my strength. Don't think that because so many column force were captured, that the ability of a bijou is limited. The power of each bijou is beyond the reach of human beings. The reason why so many column force were captured is because the seal on the bijou suppressed a certain amount of power. If a bijou really breaks free from the restriction of the seal, then no matter who wants to capture us, they will have to pay a great price. But unlike us, you are a column force. Once you lose the source of power like us, your strength will be greatly reduced. So the reality is, you need me, but I don't need you. Although Naruto has no way to verify what Nine Tails said, the strong confidence exuded from Nine Tails made Naruto believe the truth of what Nine Tails said. Because as Nine Tails said, if Nine Tails devours his spirit and reappear in the shinobi world with his body, as long as he goes through an extremely short recovery period, Nine Tails can recover his strength with his almost endless chakra. And if he can't obtain the power of Nine Tails, then he really can't protect himself. Boy, you're lucky. I've been staying in your body for a long time, and to a certain extent, I've watched you grow up. Although you don't seem so smart most of the time, and sometimes you're simply a model of one-track mind. But whether it's the toughness in your body that ordinary people don't have, or the faint aura that I feel unexpectedly familiar with, it's all affecting me, making me want to give you a chance. Nine Tails, who was half lying on the ground, suddenly straightened up, and said to Naruto with a serious look in his eyes, I will use my power and the power of this small world to condense a clone with the same ability as you. This is the opportunity I'm giving you, do your best to defeat him. I will completely open a part of my power to you, so that you will have a powerful strength that you have never had before. Do you agree with this proposal? Although Nine Tails seemed to be asking for Naruto's opinion, Nine Tails' chakra, which was as majestic as the vast ocean, rushed out of his body. In the chaotic world where Naruto's body was floating, a transparent golden energy with a somewhat ancient aura rushed directly into Naruto's spiritual world and mixed with Nine Tails' power. The two powers entangled and influenced each other, and a figure was gradually molded by the two powers. With the continuous infusion of the Kyuubi's chakra and the golden energy constantly exerting its power, this figure, which originally looked quite illusory, has become solid at this moment. The figure gradually turned into Naruto's appearance, but unlike Naruto, the clone created by Nine Tails looked like it was shrouded in a layer of black gauze, and the whole figure looked a little gray. Naruto's golden hair and yellow skin have become gray at this moment, and Naruto's blue eyes directly turned into Kyuubi's eyes. The same aura as Nine Tails drifted out of the clone, bloodthirsty and violent. The clone stood opposite Naruto as if it was born for battle. Naruto did not answer Nine Tails' question with his mouth, but directly told Nine Tails with his actions that he accepted such a trial. Naruto skillfully summoned a shadow clone. With the help of the shadow clone, a sphere condensed from chakra appeared in his hand, Futon Rasengan. The shadow clone disappeared automatically, and Naruto dragged the Rasengan in his hand and controlled his chakra to rush towards his leg. Naruto's physical fitness was very outstanding, and at this moment, under the stimulation of chakra, it became extremely powerful. And this strength was naturally reflected in Naruto's speed at this moment. It was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Naruto appeared beside Nine Tails' clone. During this whole process, Nine Tails' clone did not move at all. Although Naruto didn't quite understand what was going on with this Nine Tails' clone, Naruto knew that as long as the Rasengan in his hand can hit Nine Tails' clone, then he will have a great advantage in the following battle. So Naruto did not hesitate to press the Rasengan in his hand on Nine Tails' clone. Seeing the Rasengan in his hand getting closer and closer to Nine Tails' clone, Naruto's eyes couldn't help but carry the joy of a successful attack. As the Rasengan got closer and closer to Nine Tails' clone, a thick layer of dark red mist suddenly appeared on Nine Tails' clone. At this moment, Naruto's speed was already very fast, but Nine Tails' clone was obviously better. The palm wrapped in dark red mist directly grabbed Naruto's wrist that was holding the Rasengan, and with a slight force in his hand, the dark red mist also invaded Naruto's wrist under the guidance of Nine Tails' clone, cutting off the chakra supply from Naruto's Rasengan. Pop like a bubble bursting, the Rasengan with powerful destructive power dissipated directly in the air at this moment. Chapter 568. Although it seems that the power used by the Nine Tails clone is not the same as his own power, Naruto can feel that although the characteristics shown are not so similar, the dark red mist that constantly wrapped around the body of the Nine Tails clone is actually an energy that is extremely similar to chakra. Nine Tails is right. Although this Nine Tails clone is different from him in many aspects, his energy level and physical fitness are the same as his. After calming down, Naruto finally understood that when he rushed towards the Nine Tails clone just now, the Nine Tails clone was not unresponsive, but it has been observing his attack route, and then it completely predicted all of his attacks. It was obvious that the Nine Tails clone's speed was slightly slower because of the lack of inertia, but it grabbed his wrist very accurately. Relying on the huge advantage of chakra, it injected a lot of chakra into his wrist, directly blocking the meridians of his wrist, making his Rasengan ineffective. Naruto never thought that he could make the enemy's ninjutsu ineffective in this way. And such a thing is actually done by someone who has the same physical fitness and energy level as himself. Slightly frowning his brows, Naruto looked at the Nine Tails clone that grabbed his wrist and directly exerted force on his feet. Using his wrist as a fulcrum, Naruto directly leaped up. Naruto's body directly leaped over the Nine Tails clone's body like a flying fish. At this moment, Naruto is using the strength of his whole body to pull the Nine Tails clone's arm. The same physical fitness makes the Nine Tails clone unable to completely resist such a pull. After realizing that if he continues to be pulled like this, then he will definitely lose his balance due to Naruto's pull. Almost instantly weighing the pros and cons, the Nine Tails clone directly let go of his hand that was holding Naruto, wanting to make Naruto's pull ineffective, but at this moment, Naruto directly turned his wrist from the controlled one to the controller. The Nine Tails clone saw that his wrist was directly held by Naruto, and immediately understood Naruto's intention. Naruto wants to use this method to fight for a little advantage in the battle later. In such an evenly matched battle, once one person makes a mistake, it may lead to a complete loss. Now that Naruto has fallen into a certain disadvantage because of the attack just now, Naruto now hopes to use this move to directly erase his disadvantage and even directly reverse the situation. After the Nine Tails clone noticed Naruto's intention, not only did he not want to break free from Naruto's control, but he directly exerted force in the opposite direction of Naruto's force. Ka! Although the battle was very fierce, a crisp sound appeared directly on the battlefield, making it difficult to ignore. At this moment, the Nine Tails clone's arm that was grabbed by Naruto's backhand was at a strange angle. Obviously, in order to break free from Naruto's control, the Nine Tails clone directly dislocated his arm with Naruto's power. Although it was such a huge price to pay, the effect was naturally very outstanding. Regardless of his dislocated arm, the Nine Tails clone used his strange dark red chakra to condense a dark red Rasengan in his hand. Although one of his arms was grabbed by Naruto, the Nine Tails clone still turned around and directly pressed the Rasengan in his hand towards Naruto's body. He must not let himself be hit by such an attack. Rasengan itself is one of the ninjutsu that Naruto is very proficient in, so he is naturally very clear about the power of Rasengan. It is precisely because of this that Naruto knows that he must not completely withstand such an attack, otherwise, no matter how hard he struggles in the battle after that, failure will become inevitable. Naruto directly released his hand that was tightly holding the Nine Tails clone's wrist, then he stepped hard on the ground, and his whole body flew backward. However, the Nine Tails clone did not give up the attack because of this. The dark red Rasengan that could only be held in his hand suddenly flew out from the hand of the Nine Tails clone at this moment. The Rasengan attacked Naruto directly. Naruto was very surprised when he saw that the Rasengan could directly fly out of his hand. It was precisely because of this surprise that Naruto injected more chakra into his leg, and his speed soared again. Carefully observing the Rasengan that was flying towards him, Naruto found that there was a faint, almost imperceptible dark red thread between the dark red Rasengan and the palm of the Nine Tails clone at this moment. This is a technique that is often used to control puppets and ninjutsu, that is, chakra thread. Whether it is Tien Wood Leaf, who is good at controlling ninjutsu, or Kankuro, who Naruto is more familiar with in Sunigakure, they have used chakra thread in front of Naruto more than once. Now the Nine Tails clone is obviously using his chakra control ability that is far beyond Naruto's original body to directly create such a chakra thread to continuously inject chakra into the dark red Rasengan that was separated from his hand. But after all, Rasengan is not a simple ninjutsu, it requires fine control of chakra. Even the Nine Tails clone at this moment does not have the ability to completely maintain the power of Rasengan through chakra thread. So at this moment, the Rasengan flying towards Naruto actually weakened with the increase of distance and the passage of time, whether in terms of size or aura, it is obviously weakened by more than a little bit. Looking at the dark red Rasengan constantly shrinking, Naruto's heart began to constantly estimate the power of the dark red Rasengan cast by the Nine Tails clone. Finally, when the Rasengan was worn down to the size of a ping-pong ball, Naruto directly punched the Rasengan with his hand covered with chakra. Bang! A loud noise was directly produced at the moment when Naruto's fist touched the Rasengan, and the huge airwave even lifted the clothes worn by the Nine Tails clone standing a little far away. At this moment, the expression on the face of the Nine Tails clone was no longer the stupefied expression when he first appeared. Instead, there was a bit of indifference and playfulness, which looked very strange. A mocking smile hung on the corner of the Nine Tails clone's mouth. The eyes of the Nine Tails clone just stared at the storm that appeared because of the explosion of the Rasengan. Nine Tails, who has been watching coldly from the side, also looked at the clone created by the energy in this space with a strange look. Although he can still control the existence of this clone at will, it is obvious that this clone is no longer completely under his control at this moment. Chapter 569. Using a clone that isn't completely under his control to test Naruto is a good choice. The most important thing is that the aura coming from this clone makes it difficult for Nine Tails to arouse any hostility in his heart. In this case, Nine Tails naturally used a laissez-faire attitude towards this clone. The chaotic storm finally subsided, and Naruto, who was in the center of the storm, naturally reappeared. The clothes worn on Naruto's body were slightly tattered, and many places on Naruto's body had large and small holes because of the destruction of the sharp wind blades in the storm group. At this moment, Naruto's eyes were no longer so clear, and his eyes were filled with a sense of violence at the moment. His originally blue eyes were also quietly covered with a layer of scarlet light. The wounds on Naruto's body began to heal quickly at this moment, and there was even a faint smoke rising near the wounds. Looking at Naruto's rapidly healing body, Nine Tails couldn't help but show a touch of surprise in his eyes. He originally thought that this was just a simple spiritual space, but he didn't expect that Naruto could actually use his extraordinary recovery ability. The Uzumaki clan itself has chakra capacity and recovery ability that ordinary ninjas can't reach, and Naruto, as the Nine Tails column force, has used the chakra of Nine Tails a lot over the years, so Naruto's body has also undergone a certain degree of change under the long-term use of chakra by Nine Tails. The most intuitive thing is Naruto's extraordinary recovery ability. Even Nine Tails didn't expect that Naruto's body could accommodate his weak chakra and burst it out at this moment. Seeing Naruto's state, Nine Tails clone, who had a subtle smile on his face, also quickly restrained all the expressions on his face, as cold and indifferent as when he first appeared. Don't know if it's because the Nine Tails chakra in his body broke out, or because the injury just now stimulated Naruto's thinking. At this moment, Naruto seems to have entered a violent state. A simple seal appeared in his hand, and clouds of smoke rose from Naruto's side. Ninjutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. Almost roaring, Naruto shouted the name of the ninjutsu he used at the moment. At this moment, Naruto didn't have a trace of the Nine Tails clone just now. At this moment, Naruto seems to have fallen into a strange state. At this moment, Naruto is more like a beast than a human. Roar! 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 As the clouds of smoke dispersed, clones with the same red eyes appeared beside Naruto. Dozens of clones shouted together, roaring together, like tigers roaring in the forest, full of a beast's ferocity. This kid, looking at Naruto, Nine Tails' eyes flashed with a trace of appreciation. Perhaps from the appearance, Naruto has completely lost his mind at this moment, but Nine Tails knows that although the chakra contained in Naruto's body can help Naruto quickly recover his injuries, but that's it. If such a small amount of chakra could completely affect Naruto's mind, Nine Tails would have rushed out of such a seal long ago. How strong Naruto's mind is, perhaps only Nine Tails hidden in Naruto's body can understand better. So the current state of Naruto is actually the result of Naruto's deliberate guidance. Using the Nine Tails chakra in his body as a primer, he directly released all the beastly nature in his body. Using his most violent and most reckless attack to tear all the enemies standing in front of him to shreds. At this moment, hundreds of shadow clones and Naruto's original body all ran wildly towards Nine Tails' clone. The shadow clones and Naruto's original body were like beasts at this moment, running on all fours towards Nine Tails' clone. At this moment, Naruto's state was very physical. Although his body was completely following his instincts, Naruto's consciousness seemed to be stripped of all thoughts and emotions at this moment. He was like a machine that coldly analyzed all the information in the battle. Judging from the situation just now, Nine Tails' clone's ability to control chakra was obviously above his own. In this case, if he were to widen the distance between himself and Nine Tails' clone and enter a long-range battle, he would undoubtedly fall into a disadvantage. After comprehensive analysis, Naruto was surprised to find that the only place where he could see a chance of winning against Nine Tails' clone was in close combat. After all, his physical fitness was similar to that of Nine Tails' clone. Although close combat skills are very important, in the final analysis, it still depends on the will of both sides. If it's a competition of will, Naruto believes that he will never lose to such a cold, puppet-like guy. Naruto and his shadow clones quickly approached Nine Tails' clone. Under the control of Naruto and the deliberate influence of the beastly nature of the shadow clones, almost all the parts of their body that could cause damage to the enemy were used to attack Nine Tails' clone. Nine Tails' clone didn't use shadow clones to deal with it like Naruto did. Instead, he stood in the same place without using any ninjutsu and directly took a defensive posture. Looking at the shadow clones that attacked him fiercely, Nine Tails' clone didn't show any nervous expression. His eyes and face were still full of indifference as before. In an understatement, Nine Tails' clone waved his arms and directly broke the shadow clones that attacked him one by one. Although the nine-tailed clone's movements weren't that fast, there was no way to dodge the nine-tailed clone's every move. That kind of feeling was vaguely similar to when Nangongja once showed his strength in front of Naruto. He couldn't avoid it at all. The waving arms were like heavy hammers, attacking Naruto's shadow clones one after another. Originally, Naruto hoped to use his shadow clones to consume a lot of stamina of Nine Tails' clone, but if all his shadow clones were consumed here, it would be too much of a loss. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.